In 1966, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense wrote their revolutionary 10-point program. In the program, they demanded land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. They also demanded an end to mandatory military service, police brutality, and capitalist robbery of the black community. The Black Panthers believed that the US government was racist, fascist, oppressive, and corrupt. So it might be surprising that the Panthers chose to end their revolutionary program with this quote.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its power in such form, as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness.
Or maybe it's not surprising they would choose this quote from the US's Declaration of Independence. The Panthers believed that the United States was not delivering on its promise to secure the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I agree, which led me to ask, what would a world look like where we secured those rights? To help me answer this question, I turn to the book This Here Flesh by Cole Arthur Riley. I also rely on the sermons and writings of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in The Radical King, edited by Cornel West, which I don't have, but here's a picture. And also my friend James, which I do have.
Hi.
Perfect. My original inspiration for this topic was an essay by John Dewey titled Liberalism and Social Change. Dewey discusses what liberalism should mean in our modern day. He explains that the liberal philosophers writing during the end of feudalism had crafted some ideas that were necessary to move society forward to a more equal and less oppressive world. These things included things like individual liberty, free markets, human rights, and private property. However, Dewey, writing in the 1930s, recognized that these ideals were now the basis for a new type of despotism. Capitalists today use liberal philosophy to justify their status as an oppressive class, and we are now suffering the consequences of ideals taken too far.
Ignoring history blinded the eyes of liberals to the fact that their own special interpretations of liberty, individuality, and intelligence were themselves historically conditioned, and were relevant only to their own time. They put forward their ideas as immutable truths, good at all times and places. They had no idea of historic relativity, either in general or in its application to themselves.
What Dewey recommends is an updated form of liberalism that goes back to the main reason liberalism was created in the first place: liberty.
The thing which now dampens liberal ardor and paralyzes its efforts is the conception that liberty and development of individuality as ends exclude the use of organized social effort as means. Earlier liberalism regarded the separate and competing economic action of individuals as the means to social well-being as the end. We must reverse the perspective and see that socialized economy is the means of free individual development as the end.
The Black Panther Party did not quote the Declaration of Independence with the original meaning in mind. Instead, they read the words as they understood them. Similarly, when Dewey talks about liberty, he asks us to think about what liberty means to us today, not what it meant to the philosophers who lived hundreds of years ago. Today, we want to offer a definition of liberation. Liberation, a releasing or removing of structures that bar you from living a joyful, productive, and fulfilling life. It involves free access to the means of developing mind, body, and soul. Let's clarify some pieces of this. We say releasing because we are releasing those things internally that hold us back, and we say removing because we also remove barriers that block others' path. In addition, mind refers to our conscious intellect, body refers to physical well-being and necessities like food, water, shelter, exercise, etc. And soul refers to the part of us that connects us to all other beings in the world, those immaterial parts of us like emotions and relationships to others. And these three things, mind, body, and soul, aren't separable parts of us. They interact constantly and often overlap, nor do they need to be tied up with the religious notions usually attached to them. An atheist, Christian, Hindu, or anyone can admit that these things described here exist. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I think I said the wrong thing.
Yeah, no, I got you. All right. Liberation is a key theme in Cole Arthur Riley's work, This Here Flesh. Our main goal today is to use Riley's work sort of like a modern declaration that goes beyond just independence. We're making a declaration of liberation. We'll pull out the concepts from This Here Flesh and apply them to our society, asking two questions. Do we live up to this ideal, and what would it look like if we did? One of the words that is often overlooked in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence is the word unalienable. To me, that seems like a big word for some dudes who couldn't really read or write, but unalienable rights are just rights that can't be taken away. So, Jefferson said that the rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness were not able to be taken away. But let's really think, is that true in our society? I mean, it seems like a prisoner doesn't have these unalienable rights. Immigrants don't seem to be able to pursue happiness in the US. If you can't afford health care, you don't have a right to life. So what makes these rights unalienable? Unalienable sketch.
Teacher, what does unalienable mean?
That's a great question. It means when aliens can't have them. Stop! You don't have the right to remain silent. Cole Arthur Riley has an answer. These rights are guaranteed by our dignity as people.
Our liberation begins with the irrevocable belief that we are worthy to be liberated, that we are worthy of a life that does not degrade us but honors our whole selves. When you believe in your dignity, or at least someone else does, it becomes more difficult to remain content with the bondage with which you have become so acquainted. You begin to wonder what you were meant for.
Jefferson states that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. But the reason we are given these rights, Creator or not, is because we have inherent dignity that should be respected. Each of us are worthy of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and it's important to Riley, as it should be to us, that we understand this fact about ourselves, but also about each other. So let's consider those places where our dignity is not respected. Where are these so-called unalienable rights taken from us? The most obvious case where rights are violated is in prison. Nelson Mandela, while in prison for his activism himself, once said, "No one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails." A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones. Prisoners are clearly not given the right to liberty. In fact, that is the definition of what it means to be imprisoned. Solitary confinement is an extreme example of this and is still used in the US, although considered a form of torture and recommended by the UN only in last resort and never when the prisoner has a disability. It is estimated that there are likely more than 40,000 people in solitary confinement in the US, more than 1,000 of whom have been diagnosed with a serious mental illness. As a result of their loss of liberty, prisoners' right to life is also threatened. COVID was able to spread rapidly and easily among prisoners because of their close proximity and the lack of hygienic and healthcare access in prison. But prisons were not healthy before COVID. In fact, one study showed that each year in prison reduces a person's life expectancy by 2 years. As a result, in reality, each year sentenced to prison is actually a loss of 3 years of a person's life. 1 year lost in prison and 2 years off in life expectancy. How can that not be restricting a prisoner's right to life? Between the poor health care, loss of freedom, and let's not forget the humiliation, censorship, loss of voting rights, and virtual enslavement that occurs in prison, I don't think we need to explain how imprisonment restricts a person's right to the pursuit of happiness. Even if you feel that this is all justified, we have to admit that prisoners do not have those unalienable rights that all men supposedly have. But one can be totally innocent and still lose their rights. Those people who are not US citizens do not enjoy the same rights that US citizens enjoy. Yes, this includes immigrants who live within US borders, but why limit ourselves? All men means all. When formerly enslaved children brought a case against Nestle and Cargill, claiming that they worked closely with their enslaver in the Ivory Coast, the Supreme Court dismissed it because they thought the case wasn't relevant enough to the US. Do these men not count as all men? We like the values of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but we have failed to guarantee those. What new values can we adopt today that will guarantee these and more? What are the new values that we can adopt that guarantee life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and go further in achieving liberation? It's Nestle, it's not Nestle. I said Nestle. Okay, cool.
You know Nestle, like the
Yeah, like the chocolate.
chocolate.
Yeah, I just thought it was Nestle.
We quoted Riley saying that we deserve a life that does not degrade us. In other words, we deserve a dignified life. Dignified meaning that each living being has inherent worth. Why should we focus on dignity? When we look at the communities where each person feels like a valued member and has all their needs met, we notice that the community flourishes. Many of the social ills we face today surround the degradation of people's livelihoods. As Riley says,
In response to the risk and need around us, we have constructed systems around labor that leave even the hardest workers vulnerable, in deficit. Labor is no longer a gift. How could it be when one is withering from hunger? Labor instead becomes a means to an end, not an avenue for flourishing, but a transaction for survival. This is a grim human development, for no one wants to spend their days merely surviving.
what does a right to dignity mean for the whole society? To answer, we have to understand what gives people dignity.
What you doing?
Oh, I've been digging for my dignity, but just can't find it.
What?
Oh my God! I found it! It's here! Oh God, thank God.
Dignity means access to the basic resources of life, a right to healthcare, education, and shelter. It also means the respect and acknowledgement of each person's contributions. No one should be forced to do work that is degrading or considered unimportant. If there is work that is necessary but undignified, it should be shared by all in the community. No person should be solely a poop shoveler for everyone else's benefit. We should all have access to dignified work. And as long as there is undignified work, everyone should be required to contribute. Labor should become an avenue for flourishing, as Riley says. Dignity also encompasses how we treat the elderly, disabled, or otherwise unable to work. Although I believe that many of these people have valuable contributions to make that are not currently acknowledged because they are not considered profitable, one's right to dignity should not be based on their ability to contribute. None of this is really revolutionary or even surprising, and that's sort of the point. These values are agreeable, much like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But just like these ideals, following our ideals like dignity and others that we will discuss to their conclusion can revolutionize our society. Perhaps we can bring about Martin Luther King Jr.'s revolution of values.
I am convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, we as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society, where machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people. The giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered.
But dignity shouldn't just apply to all men. Obviously, it should apply to women and non-binary people too. But we can go even further than this. In the fight against climate change, some groups have advocated for the rights of nature. Ecuador has included the rights of nature in their constitution. Rights of nature establish that natural ecosystems are not property to be used, abused, and profited off of, but that nature has the same right to flourish that humans do. A right to dignity should include the non-human members of our earth. Does factory farming respect the dignity of animals? Does deforestation respect the dignity of the forest? Does drilling for oil in the ocean respect the dignity of the marine ecosystems put at risk from oil spills? I'll let you sit with those, but the goal is dignity beyond humans alone. Dignity also shouldn't be an individualist idea. We cannot simply secure our own dignity and leave it there. We are all degraded when any one of us is degraded. None other than Jesus himself reminds us of this when he says, "The king will reply, 'Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.'" What this means is that our dignity and thus our liberation is tied up to everyone else's. To quote Dr. King,
"Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly."
this collectivist idea leads us nicely to our next value.
In 2023, the Surgeon General of the US, Dr. Vivek Murthy, released an advisory report about our epidemic of loneliness. The report depicts a nation of increasingly fractured and isolated individuals who feel as though they are going through life's hardships alone. In his opening letter, Dr. Murthy explains that the health effects of loneliness can be as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and it has profound effects on our civic institutions. In the glossary section of the report, the first word listed is belonging, a fundamental human need, the need of deep connection with social groups, physical places, and an individual and collective experiences. This is our next fundamental right. Riley writes extensively about belonging and its sister, solidarity, in This Here Flesh. Belonging occurs when we feel integrated into our community that has common interests and goals. Some examples we have experience with are hip-hop collectives, churches, schools, and book clubs. Each of these communities pursued belonging by making each member a valuable part of the group. It worked for the well-being of each member and ensured that everyone had a voice. No community can work successfully without making belonging an essential element. Dr. King explains,
"From time immemorial, men have lived by the principle that self-preservation is the first law of life. But this is a false assumption. I would say that other preservation is the first law of life. It is the first law of life precisely because we cannot preserve self without being concerned about preserving other selves. The universe is so structured that things go awry if men are not diligent in their cultivation of the other regarding dimension. I cannot reach fulfillment without thou. The self cannot be a self without other selves."
Another Dr. King quote. Wow, this guy, man, way too much, man. Just gotta chill out with the quotes. Rather than stifling individuals for the sake of the collective, belonging allows individuals to reach their full potential by bringing us into communities that support and reinforce our growth. By protecting all members, especially the most vulnerable, belonging gives us the security to express our true selves and to try diverse ways of life, even if we fail. By working together to pursue our goals, we achieve much more than we ever could alone.
Hello humans on planechasers.com. I am a big fan of chasing airplanes and I was hoping to join this online community. Are dogs welcome here?
No dogs allowed. This is a human-only community. Including dogs in this community will undermine its integrity. As a certified human moderator, I must inform you that you are violating our rules.
Oh, can you point me to somewhere that allows dogs?
Dogs are not allowed on the internet. I am also a certified human, and I say that dogs should be banned from all online communities. Please log off, mutt.
Oh.
This concept is not restricted to relationships between individual humans. Similar to belonging, solidarity binds us across communities. Just as no individual person can survive on their own, no individual community can survive independently. That is why solidarity between communities is essential. Riley describes solidarity like this.
Solidarity is a group that stands together and would do so for even its weakest member. It is that community which resists the intoxicating lie of individualism. We live for ourselves and by ourselves. Solidarity dismisses self-preservation in favor of a new way, to sense the injustice, need, or glory of any one part as the unflinching responsibility of the collective.
It is the intoxicating lie of individualism that is causing our epidemic of loneliness. Instead of promoting individual liberty and liberation, the hyper-individualist culture of the US has harmed individual health and undermined the very social nature that makes us human. We can learn from indigenous cultures about the importance of belonging to a place and an ecosystem. Riley says,
The land I live on is not mine to have, but mine to nurture. I am responsible.
just like with the rights of nature, we must move beyond relationships of dominating property and instead see ourselves as parts of a larger web. Humanity is not a parasite or virus on the earth and can live in reciprocal coordination with the natural world. A key feature of belonging is having a voice. We must build a democratic society of love. Democracy is essential to this process because without the ability to directly participate in the decision-making process, a collectivistic community can quickly become authoritarian. We need democratic structures throughout our society, in the workplace, neighborhood, school, and social club. We need democracy for every decision that affects others. We cannot let small groups of rich people control large portions of our economy or let dictatorial bosses tell us what and how we work. We cannot continue the unequal power distribution between teachers and students or let landlords determine how much it costs to simply be alive. We must distribute power equally among all people who make society function. That is what it means to belong. All of this belonging centers around an ethic of love. As Bell Hooks says,
Without a doubt, the way we work in this society leaves individuals with little time when they are not physically and emotionally tired to work on the art of loving. How many times do we hear anyone say that they were working so hard and had no time for love, so they had to cut back or even leave a job to make a space to be loving? Certainly, individuals who love someone who is more preoccupied by work feel immense frustration when they endeavor to guide their partner in the way of love. Truly, there would be no unemployment problem in our nation if our taxes subsidized schools where everyone could learn to love. Job sharing could become the norm. With love at the center of our lives, work could have a different meaning and focus.
we want to emphasize love because many communities are often not based on love. Churches, temples, synagogues, and mosques should be sites of great belonging, but they are sometimes not communities of love, but communities of fear. Fundamentalism and cults create anti-democratic, isolating, and hateful atmospheres that exaggerate the worst in us. Instead of places of belonging, some communities are places of exclusion that prey on our insecurities and fear of the unknown. We need a belonging founded in solidarity, democracy, and love.
We live in what I call a throwaway culture. When things stop working exactly how we want, we are quick to trash them. We see this in our technology. Phones, cars, TVs, and the like are designed with planned obsolescence, meaning the manufacturer intends for them to break down to encourage you to buy the newest version. A lawsuit in 2020 revealed that Apple was purposefully slowing down iPhones when the battery degraded to a certain point. Instead of letting people know so they could replace the battery, Apple designed their phones so people would want to buy the latest iPhone. But throwaway culture extends beyond consumer goods to people. When someone does something wrong, we don't work to fix the relationships that were broken and heal the victims who were hurt. We throw people in prison, which is essentially our trash dump for people. Despite euphemisms like rehabilitation center, prisons do very little to repair the harm crime causes or to repair the conditions that led to the crime in the first place. Repair is our next value. We must shift away from a throwaway culture to a culture of repair. This, of course, includes consumer goods. We do need a right to repair, like what is being discussed in the EU. The right to repair movement says manufacturers cannot hold a monopoly on device repair. They must allow small repair shops to access to parts and to allow people to take apart, jailbreak, or otherwise modify their devices. Repairing consumer goods also means moving towards a circular economy, where reusing things is easier. Plastics and other materials that pollute our environment should be reduced. Composting and recycling should be easy and common. Repairing, recycling, donating, or composting should be easier than trashing. Sure, you technically can recycle plastic grocery bags if you take them to the store, but it's currently much easier to just throw them away. We must also tackle planned and perceived obsolescence. When the profit motive is supreme, companies manipulate customers into buying new products rather than repairing old ones. This is environmentally unsustainable. We should focus on designing products to last and discourage overconsumption to keep up with trends. We should end advertising that manipulates people into buying the latest tech, and instead educate people on how to repair, recycle, or reuse what they have. This would also reduce how much work is necessary, and we can have a shorter work week and more dignified work.
Speaking of societal benefits, our repair culture should extend to relationships between people. Instead of tossing people in the prison system, we should repair the harm caused. We can treat crime like a broken device. We should ask, how can we fix it? What can we do to ensure it doesn't break again? Let's focus on restorative justice and away from retributive justice.
Injustice has survived by cowering behind the guises of morality and ethics. The whole charade is diabolical. True justice has little concern for good and bad, and is much more interested in protecting and affirming dignity with tangible actions and repair.
When we talk of social repair, people often think of reparations. Reparations to indigenous people for their stolen land, reparations to Japanese Americans for internment, reparations to Jewish people for the Holocaust, and most often we think of reparations for the enslavement of Black Americans. When we think about slavery reparations, the case for reparations is obvious. Black people's labor built this country both literally and economically, but Black people have never been compensated for this labor and continue to feel the effects of 400 years of exploitation. However, we must think beyond simply giving money to every Black person. The enduring legacy of slavery and Jim Crow means checks are not enough. True repair means investing money in Black spaces, like Black neighborhoods, colleges, community centers, and businesses. It means giving Black people access to community spaces like those found in white neighborhoods, including pools, greenways, parks, community gardens, mini markets, grocery stores, paved roads, and well-maintained transportation options. It also means investing in Black business, providing grants and loans that have been historically denied to them. These investments will do more than just transferring money. Money should be a part of reparations, but we must acknowledge that in an economy controlled by white people, without these other investments, the money will flow out of Black people's hands and back into white capitalists' hands. The reason for this digression is to highlight an important part of repair that we also saw in the Right to Repair movement. Repair is not just responsive, but mostly proactive. For repair to be possible, structures need to be set up that allow it. This means, like we said before, making consumer products recyclable and from parts that are accessible. It also means social structures that encourage a growth mindset, restorative justice, and mutual respect. It means we take the range of human needs into account. Access to food, water, shelter, and healthcare are basic needs that have to be met in order for repair to make sense. It also means that repair is not a one-time event, but a continuous process that adjusts to the need of communities and individuals. When we think about repair in this way, we see that it isn't just good for victims of injustice. A society focused on repair is one that benefits everyone.
It is easy to think that in injustice, only the oppressed have their freedom to gain. In truth, the liberation of the oppressor is also at stake. Whether it's the privilege we've inherited or space we've stolen, what began as guilt will mutate into shame, which is much more sinister and decidedly heavier on the soul.
While dignity, belonging, and repair require structural changes, Our last value weaves these together in our interpersonal relationships.
Oh, my toe. Ah.
There are some structural changes, but we mostly could adopt it in our everyday interactions. We call this value the free expression of emotions. In This Here Flesh, Riley meditates on multiple emotions suppressed in our world. She explains how marginalized emotions like fear, lament, rage, and wonder are vital to our liberation. Without these, we are not driven to do better. Riley says about lament,
In lament, our task is never to convince someone of the brokenness of this world. It is to convince them of the world's worth in the first place. True lament is not born from that trite sentiment that the world is bad, but rather from a deep conviction that it is worthy of goodness.
or similarly, wonder.
And once we name that we do not have enough, the system convinces us that our task is to do more. We live depleted of that rest, which is the only reliable gateway to wonder. We inhabit an economy of power that views wonder and awe as frivolities or naivete, distractions on the path to liberation. Our remedy is precisely what our ailment derides. Wonder helps us get free.
For Riley, expressing our emotions is necessary not only because it is part of being human.
No!
Free expression is how we create a better world. No wonder conservatives defend systems that encourage men not to show emotion and women to be subservient. Free expression of our emotions undermines the status quo and hierarchies we've constructed that benefit the rich and powerful. So, even though free expression doesn't require a structural change like our other values, it is a necessary element to challenging our current structures. I go back to the bell hooks quote from earlier. Our schools and media must teach emotional maturity. Emotional maturity or emotional intelligence is not an innate trait, but something we can cultivate within ourselves.
Yo, it's lit! It's lit! Oh my god, these penny rolls lit!
Riley believes it is important to express emotions like fear and rage, but we must have the intelligence to know when our form of expression is inappropriate or harmful. We must self-regulate our emotions without stifling them. We must learn to be honest with ourselves and build an emotional vocabulary. We aren't born knowing these things, but we need to learn together. I don't know what the right way looks like, but I know we need to provide that room for people to express these emotions. And that should be a basic right to have that space.
There are some places where strong emotions are encouraged. Art can be a method of expressing emotions. A heartfelt poem can connect us to another's experience. A strange painting can give us a new perspective. A scary movie can combine joy and fear. And beautiful music can bring us to tears. What's great about art is that it's both subjective and unifying. When everyone in a movie theater laughs at a funny moment, or an open mic night makes the whole crowd snap in unison, or we dance together at a party, we are united in our emotions. We don't feel so alone in our feelings. Even when I read a book alone, I still find myself wondering how a friend of mine might react to the message, or if the author is pulling from a similar experience as me. Art is powerful. Therefore, the right to free expression entails the right to create and distribute art. Art should be liberated from commodification and property rights. We must also ensure that artists are rightfully acknowledged for their contributions to our lives and liberated from poverty. Everyone should be guaranteed the means to produce and distribute their art. Free expression means free expression. Also, pay artists. Creating is work.
What the heck? This is crazy!
But art isn't the only way to express emotions. Churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, and other assemblies are places where people are united in their joy, grief, faith, love, and humility. Whatever you think of organized religion, religion and spirituality are forms of emotional expression. Like all forms of expression, religion can be used for good and bad ends, so we must cultivate more just forms of religious unity and practice. It should be yet another place for the development of emotional maturity and a safe place to rage, lament, wonder, and experience joy. Therefore, free expression of emotion must include religious freedom. Some people wield the phrase religious freedom to suppress minority religions and impose their beliefs on others. Religious freedom means rights for all forms of religious expression, including atheists or non-religious people. In the U.S., Christian nationalists wish to impose their religious views on others through anti-abortion legislation, LGBT discrimination, and religious exclusion. We cannot let these people pollute our understanding of religious freedom.
Bro. God. Not tall enough. Better.
The last fundamental right everyone should have is weaving. Obviously, Karl Marx spent hundreds of pages talking about the price of linen in Das Kapital. Grandmas of the world, unite, you have nothing to lose but your needles. I'm joking, unless... But this section is actually called weaving because we want to relate these values of dignity, belonging, repair, and free expression of emotions to each other. Weave all of these threads together, so to speak. Dang. I really should have used that Garment of Destiny quote from MLK here. That would have been really good. My opinion is that repair is the thread that best ties each of these together. The motivation behind repair is respect for dignity. We need repair because everyone is worthy of a dignified life, and not imprisonment or death. Dignity is not possible without repair, because we cannot fully become ourselves without the opportunity to make mistakes. We must be allowed to learn from our failures and reach our full potential, which means that belonging needs repair, because no community will last without repairing broken relationships, nor can individuals fully heal without a community. Healing is not a solo journey. That's a quote from James. He came up with that.
We might equally see dignity as the uniting force of this rope. We just explained how repair without dignity is hopeless, and dignity without repair is contradictory. Similarly, belonging and dignity are necessarily connected. We are only able to attain dignity through others. We are all interdependent, and the community we belong to makes us who we are. And this works in the other direction too. Belonging, if it isn't to become authoritarian or self-destructive, must respect dignity. We must respect the dignity of individuals, of nature, of animals in order to have a sustainable community. Solidarity cannot exist unless we believe in each other's dignity. And free expression of emotions underlines all of this. Belonging gives us space to express our emotions. Dignity makes us aware that our emotions are valid, and repair allows us to find ways to build our emotional intelligence. Free expression must be present in the communities we belong to, like with art and religion. Free expression is an element of who we are as people, and therefore is essential to respecting dignity. And without free expression, we will be unable to dream of radical notions of repair.
Our goal today isn't to disparage the values of the Declaration. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are still radical rights that we must preserve. However, our focus on these rights, valuable in the past, no longer serves to bring us to the future. We have pulled 4 values from Cole Arthur Riley's book, This Year Flesh, that we believe serve as an evolution of liberal values. Dignity, belonging, repair, and free expression of emotions don't replace the ideals of the past, but carry them to a better future. A new set of values that are necessary in our present moment. These are part of our utopian vision. Like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, Riley's values too will one day run their course and no longer serve our need of evolving society. But we think that they are what is needed right now, one step closer to heaven on earth.
We need dignity because each person has inherent worth whose rights deserve protection. Our liberation is wrapped up in each other, which means we also need belonging, solidarity, and love so that we can become fully ourselves, which then means we need repair. Repair is proactive work that sets up circumstances where resolving and restoring justice is possible. And finally, we need free expression of emotions. We need to let people feel stuff, as it is a fundamental part of our humanity and fundamental part to our liberation. Finally, we need utopian ideals because we don't want to remake the same world with ourselves in charge. We want a new world with radically different relationships between people. Riley says,
In pursuit of liberation, we do not need to pine after the power of our oppressor. We have to long for our own power to be fully realized. We don't want to steal and dominate someone else's land. We want agency in reclaiming and establishing our own spaces. We don't want to silence the voices of our enemies. We want to be able to safely center our own voices and be believed. Liberation recognizes that I won't get free by anyone else's bondage.
The clearing specifically, when I think of the spirituality that I want to possess, it looks near identical to the scene that Morrison has painted in The Clearing. If you haven't read it or read that part of This Here Flesh where I talk about it, it's this beautiful scene where Toni Morrison has the matriarch, Baby Suggs, in the center of the clearing, and all of the people are waiting at the perimeter in the trees, and she says, "Let the children come." The children come. And she says, let your mom see you dance. And the children start dancing. I might be getting this mixed up. And then she says, men come. Let your wives hear you laugh. And the men start laughing. And then she calls the woman to the center and she says, "Cry. For the living and the dead, just cry." And so the woman let out wailing, and there's this beautiful moment of entanglement where, the men begin weeping and the children begin laughing and the women begin dancing, and they collapse in this clearing together in the grass. And then Baby Suggs gives her sermon, which doesn't sound like the traditional kind of gospel rendering of a sermon. And Morrison distinguishes this. She says, she did not tell them to go and sin no more. That traditional kind of gospel message. She says, in this here place, we flesh that weeps, laughs, flesh that dances on bare feet in grass, love it hard. She launches into this beautiful monologue about the sacredness of the body, and the body as a site of resistance, really, a site of beauty, but also a site of resistance. So when I think about the spirituality I want to embody in the kind of, sense of the divine, I want to be in the company of, it looks like The Clearing, it looks emotional, it looks embodied, it looks storied, and all of these things integrating into your connection with the divine.